May Jesus be praised, and onward with Maria. Good and holy day to you all, my dear children, in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Well, hello again with our morning feature, Saints and Coffee. Today is Monday, the 30th of December. We're still in the octave, the last days of the Christmas octave. It's called an octave because the 8 days from Christmas to the 1st of January are considered as a single day. So, octave because there are 8 days, but it's as if it were a single day. The same thing happens at Easter, and the same thing happens at Pentecost. So these three great solemnities of the liturgical year, that all three require 8 days, as if it were a single day. So here we are on the penultimate day of the year of our Lord, 2024, and we prepare ourselves in prayer of thanksgiving to the Lord to welcome the new year, the year of our Lord. 25 centuries since redemption. When will the Lord return? It's a natural question to ask as the years go by and jubilees are celebrated. The last one in chronological order was the one by John Paul II, I think, because those of Bergoglio aren't valid, as he's not the Pope. There's no way to fix this, we know. It's all nothing, a complete blackout. Those who don't want to see it, even if the lights are out, can't claim they can see. You see fine, but if it's pitch black, you just can't see. But 2025 years have now passed in this new year since the redemption. And this clearly should make us reflect, first of all, on the first question. When comes the Lord? When will he appear in the clouds of heaven? In Revelation it says, "Look, I come soon." But God's times are not our own. Before the Lord, 1,000 years pass like one day, and one day like 1,000. Being in time makes it hard for us in these coordinates. You know that Immanuel Kant, this German philosopher, still raises big questions today. Was he a Christian? Did he do good? Did he do bad? And so on. But of course, when he reflected on the categories of space and time as noumena, on which the whole phenomenon of knowledge rests, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong about that. We can't engage in timeless reflection, however hard we try. Only revelation provides it. I speak hard, don't I? Only biblical revelation allows us to momentarily focus our minds on what is timeless, metaphysical, spiritual. Because even though philosophers like Plato tried, well, let's say without much success, because we are embedded in time and space and nello spazio. We're here today, my dear children, in Cinisi, province of Palermo, Sicily, Italy, and Europe. It's 9:21 on the 30th of December. All this wouldn't be the same if we were in Hong Kong with our almond-shaped eyes eating noodles. It's clear if one can travel. You travel the world, yet one is embedded in time and space. So it's difficult to grasp God's omniscient design, the Almighty's plan, compared to our poor temporal condition. We exist in time and will leave it someday, but let's skip that since I want to discuss something interesting today. Well, it's the next to last day of the year, and we should manage to get into 2025, and it's all thanks to time dilation isn't in our favor, not at all. I'll explain what I mean. We're doing a series called Little Great Heroes of Faith. How many saints are there who didn't go to paradise, who became saints at 8, 9, 10, 15 years old? Instead, I've got 51. I'm heading for 52, so where am I? Wasted. Thanks? Have I sinned against God? How many chances have I missed to become a saint? The Lord's patient gives me time. Got it? Right then, my dear children, what we need to consider is preparing ourselves with two formulas. Miserere nostri, have mercy on us, Lord. And then also, Te Deum laudamus, because it's all grace anyway. The Lord will offer us a new year, which, as I announced last night, if you remember, in the Father Answers segment, which is available for those who haven't listened to it, was very interesting, all modesty aside. Last night's broadcast is in the playlist. You can find it there. Last night, as we were saying, we announced something important, the year of the Rosary. I announced that for us, the little remnant, 2025 will be the year of the Holy Rosary, with initiatives that we will, of course, have the opportunity to learn about and implement as the little remnant. Don't you worry, it'll reach every corner of the globe. So we're preparing for this journey. Meanwhile, Radio Domina Nostra's schedule, Our Lady's reign continues as normal, I'd say, although with a few exceptions, as these New Year's days are rather special. So for today, I remind you that this morning there was Holy Mass, then this afternoon at 5 o'clock there's the third Holy Rosary, led by me, and at 9 o'clock there's an important catechesis. The director will now show you the post. I spoke about it last night. This is the first opportunity for me to delve deeper into it. Although I did touch upon it this morning, I'll do that for the year 2025. Tonight's title is Fatima. The Rosary is for 2025. This morning's is a starter. I'll tell you the title straight away. Satan Against the Family and the Rosary That Saves. Interesting. Perhaps this morning's reflection is even more interesting than tonight's, or perhaps they complement each other. We wouldn't be able to understand, let's say, the reflection. No, we wouldn't understand. We wouldn't have a complete picture of tonight's reflections if we didn't first listen to this morning's reflection, which I will now reread. The title of this morning's Saints and Coffee was Satan Against the Family and the Rosary That Saves. I'll tell you straight away how Satan opposes the family, proposing a formula. Alternative, another form of family, which, let me say this straight away to avoid misunderstandings, we intend to respect in every way from a civil point of view. I'm talking about civil partnerships, gay couples, but which we don't share because of our faith. And that means a free church and a free state. Shouldn't it be so? I mean, let's say the Italian Republic, the Italian state, guarantees in one way or another these forms the identity of alternative families. What do? Do we go and stay in Piazza Montecitorio and hold protests against any couples? No, that's not what we mean. We mean that there's something devilishly approves the blessing of gay couples, and to that we say no, ready for martyrdom, as you will now hear is possible. You'll hear a testimony from Cardinal 𝐏𝐼𝐴, who became a cardinal because John Paul II appointed him, and why I pray because just before he breathed his last, he could speak the truth. He could say, I think that his soul is saved because he's a holy man. But if he's a holy man and pretends to call Pope Francis, it means he's risking it, in my opinion, like Father Livio, but because I love him. You'll hear a statement from Cardinal 𝐏𝐼𝐴 about a cardinal who made a prophecy to him during the 2013 conclave. The Cardinal of Chicago in the States, his name was, I'm trying to remember his name right now, an elderly cardinal, ill, and he made a prophecy to Cardinal 𝐏𝐼𝐴, which he recounts in a meeting with families, but we'll get to that in a moment. So this evening, there's a continuation on Fatima, the Rosary, and 2025. Share, like, because it circulates Radio Domina Nostra's programs on social media, and subscribe if you haven't already. Then tomorrow is the 31st of December, the second anniversary of the death of Pope Benedict XVI. We've been in a sede vacante for 2 years. Despite ourselves, we didn't do it, like those radically traditionalist groups who dislike the popes, even though it's perfectly legal. So they pretend or openly state they're not with the pontiffs. That's not it. There's no pope, because what there is isn't the pope. And why, with the true pope dead, the cardinals, it's a completely anomalous situation. We've been talking about this ever since Father Fare and Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴 took charge, and we've said it clearly. It's pointless to insist on the canonical route, because the canonical route has been short-circuiting for some time now. Tomorrow's the anniversary. No, tomorrow isn't, the 20th of January 2025. It'll be 2 years since the Code of Canon Law and the normative canonical route, if I'm not an idiot. And I hope everyone will accept that they have no ulterior motives. I don't, and I think this should be clear. I have no ulterior motives in what I'm doing, but I don't know if others don't. Because it's so obvious that if by the 20th of January 2022, the cardinals, those appointed pre-Bergoglian, hadn't declared the Pope dead, the canonical route was over. God allowed it. There's no point insisting. But isn't canon law a bit of a gamble? Cheer up, eh? Got it? What did he say? 10 seconds. Cheer up. He won. What is it? Canon law doesn't leave and double. 2022. Stop. The Pope is dead. 2023, 20th January, no cardinal has declared anything. Enough. Can they regain sense? Yes, okay. They can come to their senses by the conclave. To be honest, this is because you can see that Don Minutella in front of you, the small remainder, because here there are still pilgrims, the survivors, the tough ones, the Praetorians. It's clear in front of you that Don Minutella has the good of the Church at heart. He has no interest like those unfortunate enemies do, that they are enemies. The fact that last night I recounted that they made up, I don't understand that I'm making fun of Amadeo Minghi because I paid for it. I told my friend in Rome and he's arranging to send it to me. Face to face with these enemies, I'd know how to make them pay. Instead, he paid, and obviously he won't put down the amount paid, but he'll say that Mr. So-and-so invited and made the contract. The scoundrels. And how they tell this lie. Watch out, they said something even worse, mutatis mutandis, something like, I want to be a great prelate, I want to be elected, I want to be pope. You see, it's the same thing, lies upon lies. It's just that the problem is that this satanic propaganda against me serves to steal souls, because the devil knows that I have a mission for the good of souls. Father Gebhard, whom we greet, wishing him to convert and ask forgiveness for what he has done, has taken people away, inventing things with pseudo-mysticism. I don't know how far they've got in those parts, as I wanted to be elected Pope in Florence in 2024. And some stupid people didn't come. But why didn't you check first? The first person to whistle against Dominatella gets credited. But what happened last night, sorry for this aside, is proof. Tested that the enemies are scoundrels, wretched people full of hatred, liars, false, calumniators. They know that by doing so they lose their souls. I don't care. I hate them and I must destroy them, and they lose their souls. I appeal to them, repent. Ask God's mercy. And if you really want to save your soul from roasting in purgatory, at least make your own way. Want to ask for your wrongs? You could still save yourselves if you went your own way. Instead, they make reports, they pursue judicial slander. Got it? At all costs. He wrote, he'll mark his jail time. They're cursing me, you know. They want and these people who then go to church to see Father Gebhard, Father Fare, they follow Dr. 𝐥'𝐴. You understand? Got it? What a bunch of awful people. Honestly, hatred. Beware of hatred, the tumor that eats away at cells and leads to the death of a likable companion. Compared to that, the hatred that eats your soul, that eats your heart, and throws you straight into hell if you don't repent. It's a test. Why slander? Do you have proof that I paid Amadeo Minghi? Then bring them on. And if you really want to do it, I'll do it my way. I don't care who paid for it. The doings of my enemy, what do I care? I have to enjoy life, don't I? God punishes them, obsessing them. All my enemies can't sleep. They don't enjoy life. They're tormented. It's Satan possessing them, tormenting them over the Domina Termine. That's punishment enough. Sorry, it was just a party. But why do you care? Agree? Live your life. Go and film Renato Zero or Albano.
What on earth?
But the most serious thing is saying that I paid with your money, 𝐸𝐭𝐲𝐿𝐵𝐼. Got proof? Why not tell me? You're being stupid if you say it, because if I then prove it's not true, how will I slap it in your face? I don't know if it's ready yet, but I don't think it'll be ready this morning. Maybe I'll show you tomorrow. So, getting back to what I was saying, I care deeply about the church. Therefore, perhaps the shadows could be turned off.
Si può fare che io sono già caldato nel fuoco dello spirito, altro che stufa.
It can be done, you see, since we love the church. We've already said there's a canonical short circuit there is. Let's pretend not to see it. Our enemies, who are just as detractors as those who say 𝐵𝐼 came, the lie, the falsehood, the simulation of things. Other interests, otherwise they would have interacted with me. I remind you, and never forget it, in public comparison, just as I'm about to have people sign who said, because they wrote, that when it was the Bishop of Monreale's turn, they went there to attack him. What scoundrels, what infamy, against yours truly. Put that one in for history's sake, you get it? Freemasonry has power here. So then they'll write swearing it's not true, about those who left, those who were thrown out the moment they asked. But why did she condemn Father Alessandro without listening to him, without checking? That's not how it's done. The bodyguards threw them out, shoved them. The bodyguards shoved my people, because my people, as I'm proving right now, don't do these things. Those gossips haven't stopped belittling and defaming the undersigned's priestly dignity. Brother Celestino, who smells bad, Father Alessandro and his wicked parents, and all that stuff. But I don't think there's any spiritual daughter. Do you know of any spiritual daughter of mine, a follower of mine, as they call them? I'm not talking about those nearby. I'm talking about those from Catania to Egypt to Calabria to Lombardy. Is there ever a loyal follower who can afford to go on social media and write these things like they do? Because I give them the ban, maybe not directly, but they know the style. No one from Don Minutella's path would ever allow themselves to do those things. But who cares? You understand. This reveals the poisonous atmosphere Satan stirs up, because the devil's heart is set on trying to delegitimize the mission. That's it. And since there's only one way to save the church, which is the small remnant, time is now confirming this. All the others are just talk. So to conclude this point, and then we'll move on to today's topic, I want to say that despite the canonical short circuit, which could have forced us to say, enough, it's over on the 20th of January, 2023, I hadn't even noticed that, but not in the sense that I denied it, I just didn't pay attention. So it wasn't all bad. The canonical short circuit, it's over. There's no longer a canonical right code, it's observed. In the moment when it's not observed, and it seems to me a couple of times it seems to me that the 2013 𝐥'𝐞𝐸 should have been the one that didn't observe the canonical norms, the universes of the Lord's flocks. But oh well, let's wait. But what are we waiting for? Let's wait. It's right. I told you I believe that my brothers, but I'm sure agree with me on this, in an interlocutory phase of expectation of what? Because we love the church. Because if instead we had wanted to immediately become, you know how the priests who have left also say that I want to be, I would have done two things if you agree. The first, I'd have declared myself in Florence, Milan, or Bologna, wouldn't I? Better chances? First. Secondly, I would have immediately said, that's Satan's church. There's no position left. Instead, you know what I told you? Let's wait a little longer. The last resort, but with a few difficulties to resolve. Because they have to initiate a review of what Pope Francis has said. The cardinals who, if anything, say that he's not the Pope, must put in writing a document stating no to fiducia supplicans, no to querida Amazonia, no to Abu Dhabi, etc., etc. Because if they don't, they can elect as many popes as they like. I skipped them. Anyway, with all the petitions that are being made, it seems that no one has responded so far. Cardinal T, Cardinal C, the risk of intensifying these petitions, I say this out of affection, then God knows if I'm telling the truth, is that it risks trivializing Dr. 𝐥'𝐻𝐿 efforts. I urge you, Dr. 𝐥'𝐻𝐿, not to make any further appeals to anyone, because it demonstrates two things. A moment of profound nervousness, because in a few days, in a few weeks, all the cardinals in the world are being approached with petitions, almost as a desperate attempt to gain credibility. Leave it. It's not a competition about who's best here. We must save the church, and the church is saved by skinning our knees, Dr. 𝐥'𝐻𝐿, the feet of the tabernacle with the rosary beads in hand, forming calluses. Otherwise, it's better to get out. I don't know how many counterfeits risk, even kindly, not intentionally, ruining the project. Right then, because we ask the church, right down to the bottom, the church as Christ founded it, can we hope that the cardinals will then get to work to resolve the canonical question, how? The pre-Bergoglio cardinals, many of whom are already in their 80s and beyond, are being sidelined by Bergoglio. They're falling like ninepins. Sarah hasn't been to the conclave for a while, and yet she's a real heavyweight, Sarah. Got it? I mean, if Bergoglio still holds on for a long time, Sarah, Cardinal Sarah, who's also a point of reference for the useless conservative world, I know what they're inventing. They'll steal my terms. Magna questo, I invented that. I'm Sicilian like Pippo Baudo, so Magna questo, I invented it. Anyway, Sarah's chances of entering the conclave are dwindling. Burke's still quite young, but Burke has a few problems, apparently. I won't go into specifics, it's a physical thing. I don't know if what I know directly would allow me to, but I don't want to disrespect him by saying what it is, to govern the church. Right, I understand. I can't add anything else. You need to be, I wouldn't say in perfect health, but you need certain qualities to govern the church. In the past, they were very careful about this. If a pope, if an elected official had heart problems or various illnesses. Let's move on, though. Let's say some cardinal is working towards, perhaps I'm deciding to continue this reflection now. And everything I wanted to say about the satanic family versus the family, I'll put it, everything tonight. I see that time is a tyrant. It's already 10 o'clock. What do you say? Well, because otherwise, if we put everything together, the risk is that the interesting things I have to tell you will get lost, and I'd continue with this reflection that's spitting itself to death. So, in a bit, we'll change the title. Poor director. It's the third time, you understand, Francesco, forgive me. So, for the third time, the title will be changed. However, it seems to me that the topic is interesting. Let's see what title to give it then. So, we can give it as a last resort, because it is given even when in a condition. Because it's contradictory, inherently contradictory. They'll have to justify why they didn't do it by 20th January 2023, and how they might, if they were to do it now, how would they do it? Let's see. But let's see what justifications they might find valid for saying they didn't do it at that time. That is, when it should have been done. What might be the various justifications from a legal standpoint? Because that's where we're moving. Because the dishonest attempt that some have made to make people believe that we of the little remnant don't follow the canonical path, that we only follow prophecies, isn't working. Words fly away, writings remain. There are my books, My books clearly quote the Code of Canon Law extensively because I studied it and always got 30 with honors, and I passed my notes to my fellow seminarians. Every now and then it slips out. They say it's not good, that a great prelate, perhaps a sign that I'm not the great prelate they think I am. So let's get back to the point. Therefore, their plan to make it seem like we're trampling on their couple didn't work. The elegant father says no. We are a schismatic reality. We invented our own church, our own code. The only code to follow, and I repeat this ad nauseum, is the code of canon law and natural law. That is, law made by men, but which, unlike other legal systems, holds sway. Even in the Islamic world, they have the same criterion. And compared to, say, the legal systems of the French Republic or the Italian Republic, canon law, it's a positive natural law, but one that lives through revelation, because the supreme law is the salvation of souls. For the code of canon law, the supreme law is the salvation of souls. Okay? Ready? Are you ready? You can't just make up canon law codes, you know? So the code of canon law breathes a little more freely. Father Faré should have known this. He pretends not to notice. I mean, if you absolutize the code of canon law, ignoring, let's say, the dogmatic elements, right? Obviously, there's a short circuit, a profound contradiction. You can't just assume the canonical path is the only way, ignoring the complex dogmatic, theological, spiritual, and problematic situation. Not just the path that's the point they refuse to understand. And they jumped on them using elegant methods. Because Dr. 𝐥'𝐞𝐲 is very elegant, but it's not the form that matters, as someone said, Father. A lady left because she shouts, but let her go where she needs to go. It's the content that matters. We don't absolutize canon law. We don't live by law, We live by the word of God, first and foremost. Understand? So then, we can question the reasons why the cardinals, 3 Bergoglio, who, according to 𝐥'𝐶𝐲, would still be there. I don't believe it, and mind you, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I respect the waiting for the next pseudo-concrete thing. I don't believe it at all, and I already know that nothing will happen except what I suspect. Right then, but let's say, these cardinals come to their senses. And at a certain point they decide, before or during the conclave. Now imagine, I've already talked about these things all over Italy for 3 months, but today, at the end of the year, so imagine the situation, a parody, a comedy like Totò and Peppino de Filippo, and that's exactly what it is. Look, I'm not making it up. Imagine what could happen. If you're going to follow the rules, you've got to follow them to the letter. The rules stipulate that the papal election must take place in Rome, in the Vatican. That's exactly what the 𝐸 Dominici Gregis says within the Vatican walls. Ready? Here, unless it's the great prelate sent by God, because if God sends him, he doesn't need to ask. Excuse me, Your Eminence, may I? Here's where the road is. You've noticed that this road, which is reasonable because it's not anti-logical, this road is hyperlogical. That is, it goes beyond logic, but doesn't contradict it. Because the idea that God sends a man as he wants, when he wants, in the way he says he sends him, is not that he must be recognized. Even if he were not recognized, he would still save the church. Even if he were targeted by the whole world, the great prelate will continue because God sends him, not men. The investiture is divine like Moses. In this sense, the great prelate might not be the Pope, and yet superior to the popes themselves. Certainly. Because while the Pope was being elected, I'd said yes. And while the Pope, and I wasn't getting the text message from heaven, because you see, the Eternal Father told me I was saying the right thing. He said it pleased him. He said, no one's defending me, only you. He said he particularly liked it when I said that he doesn't need to ask permission from the cardinals, and the Eternal Father can be superior to the popes, because while the pope is elected, he's not sent. Therefore, there must be an ecclesial body appointed to elect him, which in this sense is the college. Of the cardinal electors, percuio papa is willed by God, however it is always willed, or at the limit permitted by God, but through the cardinals. Got it? Instead, the great prelate isn't chosen by any body, however noble. It's not chosen by any body, however noble, but sent by God, so the investiture is divine. He could even work alone with 10 people in the world, and the church would be saved, because God sends him to save Catholics, not the church. Perhaps Dr. 𝐥'𝐤𝐵 would need to delve deeper into this. He gets offended if I say it like that. But do you think what I'm saying is offensive? He's no priest. He'd need it explained, but unfortunately he won't allow it, unlike me, as he knows I'm telling the truth, that on certain communication techniques, etc., I've followed his advice because he's a journalist, to understand that the church isn't just the dome. The Catholic Church isn't even St. Peter's Basilica. The Vatican press room, no. And perhaps 𝐥'𝐤𝐵 hasn't understood this, or doesn't want to understand with Father Fare, that the church is where the apostolic faith is. Where the apostolic faith isn't, as St. Athanasius said, they have the seat, we have the faith. So the great prelate will serve to save Catholicism, the Catholic faith, in times of great lies. A great lie exists. Why not have the great prelate? Who will decide this? 𝐥'𝐤𝐵, Father Gebhardt, Father Fair, the escapees, Dom Minutella's enemies? Who will decide on the great prelate? Nobody. All this fuss around him, but he wants to be the great prelate. But he is the great prelate. He made himself the great prelate. There'll be this great prelate here and there, and then there's a church down below. That's the thing there. It can be argued who you like. L'Investitura comes from God. It might not be recognized even by his closest collaborators. Even he himself might not be fully aware until he is. But if there's divine investiture, he carries out that task. And in this sense, some suspicion, seeing as it's the end of the annus horribilis, comes to me as the truth. Because sometimes I say, gosh, when I talk about the great prelate, and then I check and say, but all the criteria are here. That is, he must confirm the brothers of the faith. Who was the first to shout, to roar? Mind you, it's not that I said it, I shouted it. The condemnation of the two excommunications speaks volumes. I ask myself, why? Because of the rage of my enemies. Why would they issue two excommunications? It's never happened in the millennia-long history of Christianity. Go and check, you'll see I'm right. Because unfortunately, they struggle with me, because I also know a bit about theology. I'm a theologian. They even did research at the Gregorian University to see wretched, despicable people who convert. They told me this when I went to the Gregorian, to find out if it was true, that I'd gotten my doctoral thesis from the Gregorian, called Massimo dei Voti, with recommendation for full publication of the thesis. You understand? Got it? They've checked it out too, so I understand ideology as well. It's not just them. I understand theology too. So I was saying that the great prelate is a biblical figure, in my opinion. In some passage of the Apocalypse, there's mention of him, or a slight hint that in the third secret of Fatima, in my opinion, there's mention of him. Because in the meantime, the great prelate intervenes, arrives at the moment of the short circuit on the munus. As I write in my book, Enemies Focused Right There. The P-train munus shows where my treasure lies. Remember 𝐸𝐵𝐽? 𝐸𝐵𝐽, got it right, my treasure, the Lord of the animals. So that bonus, Pope Benedict protected it. I've always wondered, firstly, why he didn't find a way to hand it over. God said, I'll handle it. Secondly, why didn't he consider post-mortem the possibility that someone knew something? Remember, I told 𝐥'𝐈 not to invest in this, but he didn't listen then, like many other things about 𝐥'𝐈. Father, 𝐥'𝐈's everywhere. Father Benedict took it himself. The munus is unavailable. The Lord gave it, and the Lord has taken it away. Can he do that? Who needs his permission? Cardinal Sarah? Who must the Lord ask? But do we have this capacity for faith to understand that God, the Church, is of Jesus Christ? And as Father John, Don Enrico, and Brother Celestine said, these three in particular, this is a situation where quite clearly we can only expect, and nothing else, God's intervention, not men's. Because I remind you that the College of Cardinals, however noble, is a human institution, of human creation, however noble, not even that old. Because it's only in the last millennium, the Church in the first millennium shone with glory, because there weren't any cardinals tearing each other apart. These wear purple and are manipulated by Freemasonry. You understand? Because it's no small selection. Even with bishops, it's like that. Imagine with cardinals. Got it? Becoming a bishop means passing a very specific kind of Masonic vetting process. You mustn't talk about the Madonna, you mustn't talk about hell, you mustn't talk about sin, you mustn't talk about grace, you mustn't talk about the Trinity, you mustn't talk about redemption, you mustn't talk about ecology, the environment, ecological conversion, immigrants. Then you easily become a bishop in Italy. Otherwise, forget about it. Imagine the cardinals. It's a figure utterly condemned in God's eyes, if you'll trust me. In God's eyes, there are no more cardinals. Why don't they exist? But it's so obvious those formed by Bergoglio, created by Bergoglio, aren't. And those created before are dissolving in the worst, the most pitiful way. So the figure of the cardinalate, which seems so decisive, is absolutely marginal and fades away. We're not aiming for any cardinals at all, but it's always possible that by the next pseudo-conclave, Bergoglio might resign or die, and the next conclave is called. Right? But the rules, I'm telling you, we need to think about this. Right then, where do they elect a pope? Rome where? The Sistine Chapel. Okay? So there'll be a conclave. This is Livio probabilmente. For example, the little face thinks there won't be. Look, he gets a lot of things right, so I believe him. It might not happen because first God allows something to happen. Because if he has to intervene in some way, he has to intervene. In the Old Testament, against the Jews, testing them with hard service, he intervenes with Nebuchadnezzar. Here, it could be Putinosoror. You're laughing, but not here? I mean, if things continue as they are, the Eternal Father sends Putinosoror. Matter is, got it? Cardinals, conclave, Bergoglio's heir, raining down. Right? So there'll be a conclave. Anyway, should there be one valid according to church law, held in the Sistine Chapel. Now, for the other conclave to be valid, what Father 𝐥'𝐈, Father Fare, and whoever else might hope for, as a possible alternative to the false church, to the false pope, a couple of conditions are necessary. First condition, they must be cardinals created by John Paul II. There aren't any left. And by Benedict XVI, there are still a few, the youngest of whom, or among the youngest, is Cardinal 𝐥'𝐞𝐽, whom I went to listen to. Cardinal 𝐥'𝐞𝐽's Christmas homily in German, expresses this communion with Pope Francis at Mass. I find it very difficult. I find it quite problematic that someone who, as a cardinal for 12 years until February 2025, says Mass in communion with Pope Francis and in his homilies suggests a certain harmony with the openings. Suddenly, as 𝐤'𝐚𝐽 or Father Faré might wish, he becomes convinced that he's not the Pope, and so overnight he goes to do. He says, but Don Ramon Guidetti didn't do that. Wait, Don Guidetti's no cardinal. A huge difference. Sorry, but he's not cardinal. A cardinal knows such things. Among other things, this cardinal, like the other cardinals appointed before Bergoglio, for obvious reasons, have already entered a false narrative once, and we cannot know how. This would let us pass it off as an established fact that they did not vote for Bergoglio knowingly. Careful, like when the alarm sounds, we can't know if Burke didn't know who Bergoglio was and voted for him due to mafia pressure. Can we know if we'll pay? No, there's a secret. So it's not so obvious that Sarah and Burke didn't vote for Bergoglio, is it? Ready? A mathematical fact. However, we want them to decide to hold the conclave, the anti-conclave, which is what they hope for, right? Poor souls. What a shame I feel for Father Farah and Dr. 𝐤'𝐚𝐽. They're in a terrible state. And those who follow them are even worse off, because, among other things, they organize the anti-small change, because they make their own way with free methods. All Father Fair's pastoral methods are all papal, taken by the undersigned. Anyway, they must meet in Rome, says who says what. But they were doing private things, says who says what. But there's an irregular situation in Rome, says who says what. So they can meet in Florence, says who says what. So the law, when it suits me with you as you wish, you can overcome and bypass it. You decide when to break the law, and why not us? Who decided who gets to break it? Who? The conclave must be held in Rome by law. You elect a pope? No. We don't elect any pope. The great prelate is sent by God. But am I getting things wrong in what I'm saying today? The Spirit guides me. I speak all night. Eat lightly tonight, though it's cold. So they have to meet in Rome within the Vatican walls. Great scene. Can you imagine the surreal life 𝐤'𝐚𝐽 and Father Faré lead? I'd like to say it's the last day of the year, with the pastoral solemnity that characterizes me, perhaps even as a great prelate, Dr. 𝐤'𝐽𝐽, urgently leave, Father Faré return with him. It suits you. It also suits you economically. You're losing pieces because of this. People notice a certain nervousness. Leave it. Father Faré has bewitched her. I'd like to bewitch him, says Dr. 𝐤'𝐽𝐽 again. This is a ridiculous path. This idea of only the canonical, I'm demonstrating it, because the pre-Bergoglian cardinals must meet in Rome. There's no exception to the rules. Otherwise, why can they break the rules and we can't? Why, if we decide to ask a cardinal to make a pope outside, no, it must be done because we are the ones proposing it. So I picked Sistine Chapel, the cardinals gather, and they elect the cardinals, those of Bergoglian appointment, elect John 14 or Francis II, right?
Va bene? E poi ci dovremmo aspettare
And then we
la
should
linea
wait in
pastorale
line
del
for the
raggiungibile
approachable
padre
Father
Farè,
Faré, supported by
supportato
Dr.
dal dottor
𝐥'𝐞𝐈.
Cionci. E questa vicenda qui mi
And this whole
spinge
business
molto
completely
al
eludes
buon
me, like a
sardo,
good
la
Sardinian.
posizione di padre
Father
Cornetto,
Cornet's
cominciamo a
position.
capirla
I gave
perché
up
non ho
trying to
capito
understand
che
her
posizione
because I
abbia
haven't
padre
grasped
Cornetto,
Father
il quale non ha
Cornet's
voluto neanche
position,
una
who
sola
hasn't
volta
once
rispondere
responded
alle,
to expressions of
alla
solidarity.
solidarietà. Sapete, alla solidarietà si risponde. Se noi
You
padre
respond to
Cornetto, lo
solidarity,
dico con
otherwise it's bad
rispetto,
manners. I say this
più che
respectfully.
mai se un confratello mi
I
scrive
never,
che è
ever, if a
capitato in una
fellow priest
posizione
writes to
diversa,
me, even
o
if
io
it
sono stato
happened in a
ridotto a
different position
solitario,
when I
voi
was
vedete
reluctant to
quanti
listen,
preti,
you have
anche
no
loro,
idea how many
hanno
priests,
manifestato
even
solidarietà.
Bergoglian,
Io
showed
rispondo,
solidarity.
grazie,
I
uniti in
replied,
preghiera, chiusi
thanks,
figli a
united in
luce.
prayer, may God give us
Non si fa
light.
così, non si
That's
fa
not how it's
così.
done, not like that.
Comunque sia, torniamo a noi.
Anyway,
Si
back to
riuniscono
us.
lì e
So they gather
il
there,
ripostiglio
and in the sacristy
della
storeroom of St. Peter's
sacrestia
Basilica,
della
amongst
Basilica
a
di San
tablecloth, a
Pietro,
dishcloth,
tra
and a
un
broom,
canovaccio
they
e
meet.
uno strofinaccio
Hmm,
e una scopa,
they meet. You can
i
imagine we're at a
quattro
level, unless they want
si
to act
riuniscono.
disgracefully. Even these last ones, I'm not talking about the cardinals.
Capito?
And I foresee
Noi
myself
naturalmente
saying
siamo
that there will be a
capitello
correction and a root and
negli
branch
tempi di non
reform.
fare i disgraziati anche
Expect
questi
it,
ultimi.
even as a
Parlo dei
possibility,
cardinali, e
Dr.
cioè,
𝐥'𝐞𝐈.
e lo
The idea
credo,
is that
arrivare a
since
dire
the
che ci sarà
cardinals were
una
constrained
correzione
by
sanazio in radice. Aspettatevelo anche da possibilmente da dottor Cionci. L'idea, cioè, che il conclave, siccome i cardinali, perché io già me li aspetto questi ragionamenti, i cardinali erano costretti dal codice Ratzinger, hanno creato un
So because
codice
of Ratzinger's
conclavex,
code, they
e
created a
quindi
conclave
nel
X
codice
code.
conclavex
And so,
sono
using the
entrati in
conclave X
conclave
code, they
e
entered the
con il
conclave,
codice
and
di
using
Papa
Pope Benedict's
Benedetto
code,
ancora
they
temporeggiano,
stalled,
avendo
having made a
fatto un patto
prearranged pact of which
precostituito
we
che non
have no
abbiamo
record.
traccia, è un
However, it's
codice,
a
quindi non si
code,
può dire
so it can't be
chiaramente, ed è
said
entrato
clearly
in
that they
totale
entered the
senso, bene,
conclave
dovevano
without wanting to
conoscere.
recognize the
Quindi dobbiamo
new.
aspettare,
So we have to wait.
Questa è la situazione.
This is
Ma
the
concludo con
situation.
questo, ma a
But I'll
che
conclude
motivo
with
per
this.
cui non ha
But then,
fatto questa
why
intervista?
didn't
È una
these
cosa più
cardinals
chiara.
appointed
Entro la data
pre-Bergoglio
prevista, canonicamente
entro la
parlando,
data
che
prevista,
è, come
which,
sapete, il
as you
20
know, was the
gennaio
20th of January,
e il
2023?
2023,
What could be
quali
the
possibili
reasons why
motivi
they
per cui
didn't
non
do
l'hanno
it?
fatto? Non lo so.
Nah,
Erano tutti raffreddati,
they
come
all had
sempre,
colds and
perché è
fevers
gennaio e
because it's
quindi c'era
January,
sciopero degli
and so there was
aerei.
an airline strike.
Ipotizza
It's
possibili.
hypothesis
Allora,
that
quindi
possible.
erano con la
So at
febbre
first,
perché
they all had a
cominciavano
fever,
l'inviato.
so they postponed it.
Può essere.
But it
Può
can
succedere
happen. It
che i
can
cardinali,
happen that
dopo
cardinals
tanto,
appointed to meet
riunirsi
to say the
per dire
Pope is
Papa è
dead.
morto, adesso ci riuniamo
Now
in
we meet in
conclave per agire il
conclave for the
successore, come
successor,
si
the
dicessimo.
16th.
Quella volta lì erano tutti
That
con la
time they were
febbre.
all
Oppure c'era
feverish.
sciopero degli aerei.
Or there was an airline
Per
strike.
cui i cardinali che
So
dovevano
the
venire non sono
cardinals who were
potuti
supposed to
venire,
come couldn't
sciopero
come.
degli aerei.
And there's an airline strike.
Oppure che cos'altro,
Or
vediamo.
what else? The
Si è
mobile phones had
raddrizzata
finished
la
charging.
ricarica nei
So when
cellulari.
Sarah
Quindi quando
called
Sara ha
Burke,
chiamato
who
a
was in the
Burke, che la
States,
poniamo negli States,
she got a
gli ha
bad
detto
connection and
non mi ha
didn't
risposto
answer
perché lui
because he wanted to
voleva
send her a
parlare con
text,
SMS, ma non si sono potuti.
but they couldn't
Queste sono
meet up.
ipotesi, diciamo,
These are
concrete per
concrete
cui entro il 20
hypotheses,
gennaio non hanno
which is
fatto,
why
non
they
ce
didn't
l'hanno
do it by
fatto.
the
Per cui,
20th of January.
vedete,
But then,
sciopero
lo
è
sciopero,
terminato,
the
a
strike
Burke gli hanno
ended,
fatto la
Burke got
ricarica
his
e hanno
top up,
finito di avere
and
la
their fever
febbre cosa di
subsided.
2 anni.
2 years have passed,
2 anni.
2 years tomorrow, since the
Dalla
death of
morte di
Pope
Papa
Benedict on the
Benedetto il 20
20th of
gennaio
January,
2025, 2 anni
2025.
di
2
cortocircuito
years of
ognissanto
canonical
giuridico.
legal
Che cosa dobbiamo
short-circuiting.
ancora discutere a
What
fare?
else do we
Dov'è
need
che
to
il
discuss?
Signore mostra
Isn't it
come
that the
stanno
Lord
le
shows how
cose per
things are
dare
to give credibility
credibilità
to
al
the
grande
great prelate?
prelato?
As the
Come dice il
prophet
profeta,
says,
hanno
they have
occhi,
eyes and do not
vedono,
see, they have
hanno
ears
orecchie,
and do
non
not
udono. È più
hear.
chiaro di
Is it
così?
clear than that?
Abbiamo una situazione
We
tragica,
have a
che dovrebbe
tragic
essere quella che il
situation.
falso Papa
We have the
è lì
feeling
per
that there's
conto
a
del
false pope there on behalf
potentato
of the
massonico
satanic
satanista,
Masonic power, and I don't need to keep
*****
saying it.
una chiesa che va
A
dietro
church that
alle
follows the
follie
heretical follies
eretiche
of
dei
Satan's
partigiani di
partisans,
Satana, da
from
Amoris
Amoris
Laetitia a Filia
Laetitia
Publica.
to
I
Fiducia
cardinali li
Supplicans.
nomina per
The
Bergogliana e riceve
pre-Bergoglio
quell'incontro
cardinals who celebrate in communion with Pope Francis and remain silent, allowing the heretical and apostate chaos to spread like wildfire. There have been a few statements here and there regarding opposition to these openings, but they ended there. And it's all the same, like the leopard's novel. On the other hand, there's a small remainder that's getting it from all sides. Tampering with the little remainder in full view of everyone, because in the end they always want to try again to go against the little remainder and create alternative formulas, such as, for example, a kind of semi-ecumenism for me, that last direction of Father Ferrea. Then 𝐥'𝐿𝐴 joined in, because I understood that 𝐥'𝐿𝐴 joined in, at least that's what he told me. That is, he told me on the phone that he didn't know who it was, even though others told me that he had known for a long time. I don't believe those who told me, because I had respect for their sincerity and professional honesty. I can't believe he'd tricked me. So I want to believe that he only found out at the last minute, as he told me. He heard from his father. Even if it led to a default, I wouldn't want to dwell on. First, he says, he found out because he didn't have time. Then he ran off to tell me, and I heard him say at some point, "But you told me you weren't following." And then later in the phone call, you tell me that at some point he said, there's something wrong. Anyway, it should have been Father acting as my mentor, not the other way around, or the other way around. Who knows? It's unclear. Anyway, this position, if you think about it, is very similar to, well, they'll sort it out. Number, in time, you will see why there's not much difference from 𝐸𝐼𝐴 If they think about it, they actually solved the discomfort of the 𝐸𝐼𝐴 once and for all, not content with Bergoglio. Because Father Fer said it in a way that, from a theological point of view, I find rambling. If there's a priest who says Mass, think about Bergoglio. Go to Mass, go to parish Masses and say, I'm not in communion with you. But because it's the individual baptized person who can decide, as Father Cornet said, you go into the church and say, I've come to Mass, Lord, to show my faith in your real presence, but I'm not in communion with you. And you decide, everyone decides, it's total chaos. Or am I wrong? Theological anarchy? I'm at a loss. Why does everyone choose here? So that Neapolitan lady in Santa Pace, she practically made a golden statue of me when she said, Father, if I go there, I'll be making horns under the table when Bergoglio is mentioned. Then she was right. That one's a fan from way back. More than Father Cornet, certainly. Well, actually, it's not like that. The question of who is the Pope, I didn't say that, Pope Benedict says it, is crucial regarding ecclesial communion as a guarantee. The Church's we is a guarantee. It guarantees me as an individual. I have to become part of the church community. There's a we of the church within which I, as an individual, I'm assured I can be in communion with God. There's a we, or if you prefer, a corporate I, which is the Holy Roman Mother Church, that tells me this is the Pope. The Pope is visible assurance of ecclesial unity as the Holy Spirit forms its unseen core. So, I individually, Father Alessandro, Sister Nadia, Sister Alessandra Mariangela, we can't individually take on this matter. We need to be part of a corporate we, an ecclesial we that says this is the Pope. And if he's the Pope, I have the assurance that I'm in communion with Christ. Because as Pope Benedict said, no communion with Christ without the Pope. That is, communion with Christ passes through communion with the Pope, not because the Pope is God's deputy, but because poor Christ is the visible guarantee of ecclesial communion, of the we, of the church, that guarantees us to individuals. So beautiful. We enter with baptism into 3 days ago we baptized a Japanese daughter, Maria. Here she comes from Nagasaki, Japan. She was listening to us. She liked it. A journey. She prepared herself, and with the baptism, she entered into our ecclesial community. You see? She's joined our church. So one can't personally guarantee who is or isn't the Pope, but Father Fare's position is entirely, it seems, identical to 𝐥'𝐤𝐵𝐻𝐼's, however. Apparently, because we can hope for some clarifications, it's similar to a cure, if you think about it. Actually, it's even more comfortable because you can choose. Father Fair will be saying the Mass next Sunday, all right? Bring the chalk. That's what he wrote. They gave me some chalks. Maybe it's for that speech we've been doing for years. He's giving it as a surprise announcement. They're using old methods. Look, incredible. The ones I use, right? To build the suspense. It's for January 6th. That marble thing. We've been doing it for years. Right. Bring the chalks. Right then, next Sunday, bring your chalk because you're at Mass with Father Fare, not mentioning Bergoglio. In 2 Sundays, bring Naples red horns. You'll attend parish Mass. So next Sunday, together with our whoever, and the Sunday after that, together with Pope Francis. See how comfy this is? See how comfy this is? That's why some left. Why is the position between sneezes and yawns and coughs today in this category turning out to be apocalyptic? Because then they amplify a lot in that direction, right? Then the Eastern section. We're nearing the end, closer to Rome from that side. There you go. Right then, my dears, I'll conclude like this. You realize then that there's a profound anomaly, and it seems to me, and meanwhile those who want to can open their phones to call, it seems to me, my dear children, that the position they're contesting, as if we were Anabaptists, will be accounted for by God. Those working against us because I don't believe in their good faith are going against their conscience, because they know that Don Minutella is a serious priest. If nothing else, they should acknowledge that he was the first, and yet he's not mentioned now. Those I'm interacting with are Father, I'd say Dr. Cianci. It's them who are facing this maglia, these, or Dominatella. It doesn't exist. Interesting. The aim's always the same, but let them get on with it. Who cares? I said a moment ago, if the great prelate were to be sent by God, even if he's not recognized, he'll carry on because his investiture is divine, not human. There's no need for him to be recognized. Those who know him feel it in their hearts, follow his path, and stay true. That's enough. Right, pray, defend the Catholic faith without adding anything new, because it's not the time to add anything new, but to move forward without being contaminated by the false church. And then wait. After 2 years of complete contradiction of the canonical short circuit, we'll see if the cardinals do anything. After that, we can fully say that we have waited. It's not true that we're against the law, but they haven't done anything. That's a fact. So we can only expect from God. Careful, what can we expect from God? Well, we can't know, no. God told us through the Madonna, the great 3 sides, I send it, he will hold the scales of the sanctuary. It's not like we're walking in total darkness, don't do that. He only made a gesture. No, but I'm right about this. I mean, it's not true that we're waiting for something completely new from God, because the good Lord who loves us warned us in advance. Prophecies recognized by the Church, like the one about the great success in Ecuador, where Our Lady actually described, it will be humble, and they have enemy reasons. If it were me, I'd have to learn, so I'll make you a bit happy because today I really flattened them. It will be humble, but with a strong voice. It will shout the truth, its arrival will be prevented, etc. So something has been revealed to us. It doesn't seem like we're so crazy to take this path, because there are no others. They're blocked, dead ends, as the circumstances suggest. We don't practice them anymore. They're gone. The canonical path no longer exists. The canonical code is now merely a tool, an instrument of the devil, used by Satan's partisans to command and silence. The opposing voices, then, that's not valid either. It's no longer usable. It's a zeroing out. Has this ever happened in the church? Of course it happened, not so naturally, but in Arius's time something similar occurred. But this is a quite unique situation. That's why we need the power of the Holy Rosary. The path that will save the Church is not canon law, but the Holy Rosary. Remember this seemingly simple phrase, where everything is contained.